Okay, I think I'm live. Well, hello friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS office hours. As usual, I'm not 100% sure that I actually am live, so I'm just gonna wait for somebody to acknowledge. But usually it seems to work. Having some very Linux problems with my camera today. Okay, great. People letting me know. Thank you. All right, so it is Friday, and it's the first office hours of the new year, but I don't think we're going to change anything, because why change something that's been working just fine? So if you're new to SerenityOS office hours, what we usually do here is we take random questions about SerenityOS or adjacent subjects. They can be technical, non-technical, and we dig into stuff. So basically, chat determines what we talk about, what we dig into, look into. Oops. It is very nice to see people here. We had a little bit like lower turnout during the Christmas celebrations, but I don't know if people are still vacationing, things like that. Here's Linus. I know Linus was out of town. I don't know if he's back, but at least we'll find out. So let's see what we start with. So Zexa, I don't really know exactly how to pronounce your name, but Zexa, I guess, is fine. Has a random question. Why a ladybug? Well, that's a little bit mysterious, but part of the lore is that we sort of embrace that software engineering is about bugs, and that there's always going to be bugs, and it's just something that we live with, and we learn to love having bugs and always chasing bugs. But then, of course, there are deeper levels to the lore as well. Let's see. So, hello Quaker, hello Tim. Edwin is asking, how do IPC servers work? That is a good question. So I guess we can, we have covered that in multiple videos. So it would be good to know if you have a more specific question. Also, pardon me, I have to do something with my throat here, just a second. All right, hopefully the mute worked and you didn't have to hear that. So let's see. So how do the IPC servers work? Right. The way that they work is essentially we use Unix sockets. So let me start up the system and show you sort of an example of what that means in practice. So Windows Server, which is our windowing system machinery, is responsible for drawing everything that's on screen, and all the GUI applications talk to Windows Server and negotiate their location on screen and receive events like mouse events, keyboard events, and stuff like that. And all of the control communication that happens between GUI programs and Windows Server happens over a local socket, which is where we do our inter-process communication protocols. And in practical terms, there is a what we call a portal file, but that's just our name for IPC endpoints or IPC sockets in the file system. So as you can see, it's an S file here, which means that it's a socket. And when a GUI program starts up, it just tries to connect to this file, which means that whoever is listening on that file, which is Windows Server, receives an incoming connection request, which it then accepts, and then they speak our IPC protocol over that socket connection. And it's a standard Unix domain socket protocol, or Unix domain socket, and you can look those up if you just search for Unix domain socket. then this is what it is. So we've just implemented the standard thing that all Unix systems support. And then, of course, there's the protocols on top of that with the code generators and all that stuff. But essentially, that's what it is at the lowest level. So if you look that up, you will find more information. So let's see. Alex Major is asking, where/who did the new intro video come from? So the spinning lady ball was made by FRHUN on Discord. And the soundtrack is from a YouTuber called KK Music. And there's a link to KK Music in the video description. And I just thought it would be fun to have like a little bit of intro to sort of set the tone before I come in and talk. It's just something we're trying out. Let's see. Hussein is asking, I'm new to here, so wait, what do you do to protect your mental health while working from home? Well, I don't know if I have any like great inventions in that area, but what I do personally is at the moment, I try to take time away from the computer and play video games, and I try to go to the gym regularly. So just have some things that I do to get myself away from the computer every day. And I do end up spending most of the day at the computer, but I think, at least for me, the thing that I take very seriously is forcing myself away from the computer, because if I just let myself do whatever I feel like, I'll just sit here all day, right? So I drag myself away from the computer to play video games, or to cook something more elaborate, or to go to the gym. Let's see. Leonardo is asking, how does the move instruction work and what's its use? I'm not sure I understand the question. What move instruction? Let's see. Manas says, Happy New Year. I hope you and your family are doing well. You are an inspiration for me. Thanks for the SerenityOS videos. I not only learn OS dev from you, but also learn life lessons. Well, I'm glad you say that. And then you say, love you a lot. I love you too, Manas. That's very nice. I'm glad that people find all kinds of inspiration in my video library. And it's weird how many videos I have now. I was just thinking about that earlier today, that it's going to take me a long time to sort of double my video count, because I got like over 800 of them. And I used to churn out so many, like sometimes 2 every day for several weeks in a row. But that was, I don't know, that was draining in a different way. So I haven't been doing that for a long time, of course. But I am glad that that we have the library, so that people can find all kinds of interesting subjects that they want to learn about. Let's see. Bauer B says, Hi Andreas, can you explain why you don't use exceptions in Serenity? What would be needed to be able to handle exceptions? We don't use exceptions because I don't particularly like them. I think they are they obscure control flow in a way that I find makes code worse. So I decided from the beginning that we just don't use them. What would be needed? You would need to start a different operating system project if you want to handle exceptions, essentially. Let's see. El Cocos says, Hey Andreas, do the backgrounds you use in your videos have any special meaning? How do you choose them? Is this something you do for yourself or for the videos? So usually whenever I record a video, the first thing I do is go and find a new wallpaper online. So it's just something I've been doing since basically since day one, just having a new wallpaper in every video just for fun. And I enjoy picking out new wallpapers, and I think the majority of them are from Google image search or Bing image search, but also from like wallpaper collection websites. It all depends on what I'm looking for. Let's see, German WTB says, have you tried the inspector lately? Because it doesn't seem to work without throwing an error for complex-ish applications like File Manager. I have not been messing with it recently. Let's try to enable it for File Manager. So when you want to use the inspector, you have to opt into it by, you have to pass something to GUI application create, as I recall. Or wait, what's it called? You have to pass in something that you want to be inspectable. Yeah, core event loop make inspectable. It's been a while since I used this, so we just pass that along here and we say yes. And then let's try this out. Okay, so now we have this guy here, and then we want to inspect him. So let's try that out, and it hangs, it seems like. Okay, so I guess this is what you're talking about. I have not messed with this recently, and the RPC client sent an invalid request. So I guess we would have to debug that, figure out what it's sending, and wait, what did I even do there? We want to figure out what it's sending, maybe by dumping it out. Request JSON, or let's just dump the raw request. Actually, we could see what it is, but I don't know. We're probably not going to debug the entire thing here. Let's see. Wait, what is that type even? Oh, it's a byte buffer. Okay. It's a little bit weird that we can't format a byte buffer by default. I thought we could. Okay, and let's try that one more time just to see what's up. So this is the request that we're sending, so that looks totally bogus. Identify is probably what we're looking for. Process send request. So it feels like we're using a bogus length somewhere, right? Because if this is the request that we receive, it feels like there should be more characters at the end here. So send request. Oh, look at this. What is going on here? Oh, wait. Maybe maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I thought that we were sending that thing wrong. Got a little too excited. So what's serialized? It's a string. We try to write a string. Yeah, okay. This we'll have to debug this offline because I don't want to accumulate too many questions here before losing track. But yeah, so that seems extremely debuggable. It's just something dumb happening with the request and showing up incomplete on the other side. So wait, somebody told me how to pronounce this name. Manas. Okay, Manas. Says, how does GUI scrolling work in Serenity? Does it maintain any backing store for scrollable items, like list items that need scrolling gets drawn to backing store of the scroll view? Is this correct? So there's no separate backing store for scrollable items or scroll views or anything like that. Every window has a backing store. and it's a double buffered, but widgets within a window don't have their own backing store unless they are sort of special purpose widgets. For example, in the browser engine, the canvas element has its own backing store, but it's kind of a special case because we need to retain state. But for something like the item views, like table view, tree view, icon view, they just repaint on the next paint event. So there's no backing store. And we just paint the sort of the content of the view with an offset, and then we do some optimizations to avoid painting things that are not going to show up on screen anyway, things like that. But it's not terribly fancy. Supernova is asking, is there a compiler on Serenity? And if so, does it support linker? Well, there's a port of GCC and binutils, so you can use those. Alex says, play video games away from the computer. Do you have a console? If so, which one? Yes, I have a PS3, PS4, and a Nintendo Switch. And recently I've been playing Sekiro, which is absolutely brutal, but quite fun. Let's see. Dot, or somebody with a very short name here, says, what does Serenity use instead of exceptions? We use this thing that we have called error or. So it's a return type which is either an error or something else. So if you don't have anything in particular to return, but you can still fail, then you can return error or void. And this is a pattern that has been sort of organically evolving over the last year and change. And we're still sort of figuring out how to use it, but it's very similar to the way that error handling is done in more modern languages like Rust and Zig and stuff like that. Let's see, Abhishek with the super chat saying, hey AK, hope you are doing good. I can finally send my first super chat. Thanks a lot for creating this channel and sharing/documenting your journey. Thank you so much for the super chat, Abhishek. I really appreciate that. And ooh, that's Canadian dollars. That's awesome. I was fascinated with Canada as a child because of the NHL, because we got these hockey trading cards where which were like really trendy in my school growing up, and none of us actually watched NHL because we couldn't see games on TV or anything, but we had the trading cards, and we all picked our favorite teams based on how cool they looked in the trading cards. And I was very into the Quebec Nordiques, as they were called back then. Anyway, that's a tangent. Let's see, Leonardo says, an example of move from the source code, and then there is no example. All right. Ali says that I can use the, right, so this is a way to get byte buffers to dump out in some fancy way. Right, so yeah, I would use a string like this, right? And then I can dump out a fancy hex dump of the byte buffer. Sure. Zaidhan says, how does graphics work in Serenity at a low level? I'm not too familiar with operating systems development, but its wiki mentions VGA/VBE modes. Is this how Serenity implements it? Right, so we currently use, the way that I use Serenity most of the time just uses mode setting of, or like VESA mode setting. So we're not doing anything particularly fancy. We just, or actually, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit because we do some fancy things. We do tell the graphics adapter which video mode we want, and we can change it. So we're not strictly using any of these things, but rather we're speaking directly to the graphics adapter. It used to be a bit more simplistic in the past. It's pretty simplistic, but we have this set resolution functions that you can look for if you want to see how they are implemented. So we have a couple of different ones. Like we have a basic one for like VGA compatible adapter, but we also have special code for the box graphics adapter and for the VirtIO GPU graphics adapter. And I think there's an Intel native graphics adapter somewhere, which I haven't looked at in forever. So it's not quite as simple as sort of the early version you would get from the OS Dev Wiki, but rather we try to talk to the graphics adapter that we find, although we don't have support for many graphics adapters, but the ones we do support are mostly like emulation specific graphics adapters, like the QEMU one or the VMware one, stuff like that. Zexa says, have you figured out the disappearing comments on YouTube yet? Have you checked YouTube Studio? Comments likely spam? Right, so I've checked that. I check that regularly because I do get comments showing up there, and I always just allow them. But not many of them end up in there. And I think it seems to me that what happens is that if you put anything that resembles a URL into a comment, then YouTube will just yoink it, and it will never see the light of day. That, at least that seems to be what's happening, because people, I can sort of only infer from context. It's a little bit weird, but I see sort of the first sentence or so in a notification preview that I get. But when I open YouTube to see the full comment, it's gone. So in those like first sentences, it often sounds like something you might say before you post the URL. So like, here's an example of ... and then comment is gone. But I don't know that for sure, but it seems to me to be related to URLs. Let's see, Yippee Dev says, hello, Andreas, good evening. I assume it's evening there. Well, it's 4:30 p.m., but somewhere between afternoon and evening, I guess. I got a question. Does Serenity use CMake? Yes, it does. I only see Ninja in your videos, but when I compiled Serenity back in June 2020, it used CMake. Yeah, it still uses CMake. Ninja is one generator that you can tell CMake to generate Ninja files for you, and then you use Ninja to build the thing that CMake makes for you. So CMake is sort of a meta build system almost. Like you use CMake to generate build instructions for another build system. So by default, CMake will generate make files, but we tend to use Ninja because Ninja is significantly faster than make, so it's just much more ergonomic to use Ninja. And I'm not sure exactly why, because I never really dug into it, but I think one of the people who often hacks on, or sometimes hacks on Serenity, is also one of the authors of Ninja. So maybe we should ask him at some point why it's faster. I could imagine it has something to do with like avoiding excessive file system traversal and stat business when you're doing dependency checks, but I'm not sure. Zexa says you could pronounce X in Xexa as a voiceless uvular fricative, like ch and bach. Okay, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I'm gonna have to practice in front of the mirror. Kleines Filmröllchen asks, hey Andreas, how does the event loop work? JK. Yeah, so Captain Filmröllchen here has been working on sort of upgrading our event loop to make it multi-threading friendly. So this is a joking question because I assume that they are extremely aware of how it works at this point. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that work finished and integrated. Let's see. Ecoptic says, I don't know if you explained this in the past, but how does an operating system go from printing to a VGA buffer to rendering the desktop, for example? I don't know if this is a good question. Just started getting into OS development. So the easiest way to get started with something like that, if you're in early stages of learning about operating system development and you're building your own kernel, I would recommend just using a boot protocol to have the bootloader hook you up with a nice video mode, and you can ask via the multi-boot header protocol. You can ask the bootloader to give you like, oh, give me the screen fully set up in 1024 by 768 32-bit color mode, and then you just get like a frame buffer in memory where you can poke each pixel as a 32-bit value with like BGRA or BGRX, really, color storage. That is really the easiest way to get started with that. And I'm sure that there's a page about that here. Yeah. So that's for you, Ecoptic. I recommend this. This is the easiest way to get started with graphics in your own kernel, for sure. Let's see. Neil says, does SerenityOS support USB memory sticks? And if so, what file systems does SerenityOS support? It does not yet support USB memory sticks. USB support is still in early development. But in terms of file systems, the on-disk file system that we do support is ext2. There has been various, and ext2 and ISO 9660, the CD-ROM file system. There has been talk of supporting other file systems, but nothing really materialized. But, you know, eventually, once we have USB mass storage support, there will be great incentive to implement something like one of the FAT systems, right? So that we can do data exchange with other machines. Stephen Hawkins says, with a super chat, love your content. You gave me courage to open source a few of my projects and even record a few YouTube videos about them. Thank you and stay awesome. Dude, that's awesome. Thank you so much for the super chat, by the way. I gotta look up what this is. CZK. Czechish? Oh, it's a Czech koruna. Cool. Koruna. Czech koruna. I had a whole bunch of those at one point, but managed to lose them. That's awesome that you open sourced a few of your projects. It's one of those things where I always find it funny when people have a whole bunch of code that they've been working on and they are sort of scared of putting it online on GitHub or something like that. And not for any particular reason, just because it's kind of new and unfamiliar. And I always enjoy encouraging people to just put your stuff online because it's a bit like, I don't know, like having your windows open so that people can see that you have nice flowers, I guess. Doesn't mean that somebody comes in and waters them for you, but people can see them from the outside. And also, by the way, it's awesome that you are making YouTube videos about them. If you link your channel, then we can check it out later. Let's see. Harshit says, the way I described my childhood is very depressing. Hey, come on now. Trading hockey cards without being able to see the hockey was not so bad. Maybe it was a little bit depressing. Let's see. Leonardo says, for some reason, the chat has removed the code. All right. The move example from the source code, GUI action create, details name, move icon. Right. So you're asking about C++ move, right? So that's really, the move that we have is identical to std move, which is in the, there's like a million web pages where you can read about std move. And the point of std move is just to turn the thing that you're passing to std move, we turn that into an R value reference so that we can then move construct it, and we can pass it avoiding a copy. So if you have, say that you have something at a call site, like in your example here, right? We have some icon at the call site at the place where we're calling GUI action create. And we don't need that icon anymore here. So we can just pass it along and give ownership of the icon to GUI action create. If we did not move it, we would instead be passing like a copy or a const reference. But since we don't need it anymore at the call site, we can transfer ownership. And the way that C++ facilitates that is via move. So it's just a way to transfer ownership to a callee in this case. S. Salur is asking, are there any libraries you can recommend to make GUIs? Well, I guess I would recommend Qt if you want to do it in C++. And you can deal with their slightly esoteric licensing requirements. I think Qt is a lovely toolkit to use, very, very productive. If you want to fit into the sort of the modern Linux desktop, I suspect that you would have a slightly easier time with GTK. And I was recently recommending GTK MM to somebody, which is a C++ wrapper for the GTK library, which I guess is okay. But it really depends on what you want to do, right? I don't even know what platform you're on, so it's hard to answer. Atlas87 is asking, why is there an ifdef Serenity block on some source files? That's because we build many parts of Serenity on other platforms as well. So when you build Serenity, we actually we build not a large part, a medium part of the system we build for your host machine, so that we can use our own code in our helper programs, like helper programs for the build. So we have a bunch of code generators, for example, programs that generate C++ code for things like our IPC subsystem. And the code generator is written in C++, and it uses all the Serenity data structures and algorithms, libraries, stuff like that. And in order for that to work, we have to build say like a Linux version of a bunch of the Serenity libraries if you're building on Linux. And for all of that to work, we have to do some things sometimes in our code that's like specific to Linux. So if you look for, wait, what do we normally do? How do we check for Linux? Am I even in the right place? Yeah, we have some places where we check for Linux also, or Mac OS. And that's because of that. So, for example, we do have some people I know who like to work on the JavaScript engine, and they, if you're only working on the JavaScript engine, then you can actually just stay on Linux, and you can build here instead. If I just set that up correctly. And by doing that, you get like a more streamlined workflow where you don't have to boot QEMU just to run the JavaScript tests, right? So that's sort of why we have that, because everything that exists on Serenity doesn't exist on Linux, and vice versa. Let's see. Atlas is asking, favorite metal band? Damn, that's a good question. At the moment, probably In Flames. That's what I was listening to in the gym this week. Some of their old stuff from 20 years ago. And they are pretty local boys. They're pretty close to where I'm from. So I gotta represent that Gothenburg metal. Let's see. Ooh, Tim with the super chat saying, I haven't seen a sponsorship update in a while. might have just missed it. Wondering how that's going. Are you still eating ramen? Thank you for the super chat, Tim. That's true. I should do an update on those. It's going just fine. It's always going up and down, right? So I try not to look at it because, like, I look at my, if I go and look at my Patreon, it will say that, like, oh, 10 people unsubscribed, and then 10 people joined. But, you know, being a human, my brain just says, oh, 10 people unsubscribed, this is an issue. But then it's always like going up and down like that. So I try not to look too much. That's why I was doing the sort of the updates where I would, you know, once a month or something like that, take a look at it and see how it's going. And it has been steadily going up. It keeps going up. So that's great. But I'm still trying to eat cheap. I think it was Andrew Kelly from Zig who said somewhere that he tries to live cheap but healthy, or something like that. And that's sort of what I'm going for as well. But I haven't been eating ramen for a while. But in terms of like takeout food, I've had, I think, one instance of takeout food in the last year. I got a pizza with my wife, I think. So staying on the cheap for sure. It's like sponsorship is going well, but it's not at the point where I would feel comfortable splurging on anything. But I think that's healthy because I don't have a desire to splurge and I don't really need anything. So yeah, if we'll see what happens with that, I guess. But thank you for asking about that, by the way. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the support. Let's see. Ominous Liticus says, how friendly is Serenity to high-performance computing? Does the ACK library contain a concurrency API like we expect to see in C++23? It is not friendly to high-performance computing at the moment because it has quite unstable multi-core support. And there is no concurrency API in the ACK library. So I guess that's that. Our job says, do you sometimes feel a kind of urgency given that our time on this planet is limited and so much left to do in life? No, I don't think so. I used to feel a sense of urgency in the past, but one of the big things that I've learned sort of spiritually from working on this project is that it's okay for things to take a long time and to sort of stretch out into infinity time-wise, and I don't mind it. I actually kind of like it. When I was younger, I used to think that, you know, if I would die today, I would be so upset because there were all these things that I hadn't done, things that I felt were important, but then also didn't make any tangible progress towards. And that was, you know, it was one of many things that was stressing me out in the past because I sort of lived a very reckless existence. And at the same time, I sort of worried about the consequences, but didn't want to take them seriously. It was a very contradictory personality. And in recent years, I find it much nicer to just let go of that. And if I were to die today, I would be pretty happy about what I've been spending my time on recently, you know, and I wouldn't feel like, oh, damn it, I didn't get to do this or that. So I think that's a good sign. Of course, I would prefer not to die because I have lots of programming that I would be happy to do, and I also have people that I care about and so on. But it feels nice to be at peace with it, and I don't feel like I'm in a hurry at all, really. And it's actually something that I guess I try to sort of inspire other people to feel the same way when they're around me, if I can. So in practical terms, like I never try to rush anybody who's working on stuff with me. I don't make demands of people, you know. At least I try not to. I probably screw it up sometimes, but hopefully not too much. As Paul says here, a hint to part of your answer is in the name, Serenity. Indeed, indeed. It's not just a name, right? Like it's a lifelong pursuit. Cold Coffee says, what's up, Andreas? Just wanted to say thank you and hello from Bosnia. Hello to you too, Bosnia. Nice to see you here. Tristan says, I found one of your videos over a year ago on r/programming, and I've been hooked on them since following the program. Well, that's nice. Welcome back to the program. Today we're live, but I'm glad to hear that. I have not posted to r/programming for a while. I started feeling a little bit bad about posting there, even though the folks on that subreddit were generally receptive to my posts. I did feel like I don't want to come in here and like just post my own things all the time. So I figured I would cut back on that before somebody got annoyed. Let's see. Ooh, a super chat from Leonardo saying, thank you, Andreas. I'm happy to contribute to the project. This week, I created my first 2 pull requests, a tic-tac-toe implementation and a file manager bug fix. I am happy that you enjoy the contribution process. And as I've said in the past, it's not just a contribution process, but a participation process. I think I made a video about that like a bit over a year ago, I think it was, where I talked about I think that there's more to open source development than just contributing code. But you can take it to the next level and participate by joining discussions and in this case, like coming to the office hours and joining the chat. I think it really, it's like a whole other level of engagement, and I'm happy to see you here. And thank you very much for the super chat. Let's see. Punji says, wait, what time is it? It's time for office hours, my friend. Arm32 says, how would you go about using the ACK library on Linux in a CMake project? How would I go about? Well, how would you go about it? I guess I haven't done this recently, but as I recall, you can, when you build Logom, which is our sort of operating system agnostic subset of Serenity, then you get shared libraries for your host machine. So if you build that, then you can then link against that. And there is a README about that. If you go into our repository and go into meta logom, then this README right here tells you how you can use the Serenity C++ library for other operating systems. So that's where to read about that. I will drop a link in the chat. Let's see. Zaid Han says, do you have any thoughts on RISC-V and the future of open source hardware and software in general? No, I don't really have any thoughts on that because I haven't really read about it properly, so I don't have a sophisticated enough opinion that people should have to listen to it. Thomas Ho says, thanks for building Serenity. Managed to build the OS in FatDog64 Linux. That's an amazing name for Linux. I haven't heard of that. And learned a few things along the way. For example, building a new version of GCC and modifying certain shell scripts to make it work. That's excellent. This is actually part of why I really like that we have our build scripts the way that they are, because the fact that that you say that you learned a couple of things when getting the thing to build, I think that's really nice. And I'm always happy to see people accidentally learn something while checking out the project. It would seem a bit sad to me if you would click button get Serenity, right? I like that you have to do a little bit of work, and that has been our policy since day one, that if you want to build a system, you have to put in a little bit of work. So I'm glad that it worked out. Also, I got to look up FatDog64 because now you got me intrigued. Also, no, wait, FatDog64 Linux, a small yet versatile 64-bit multi-user Linux distribution. All right, that's great. Let's see. So we got a super chat from Pankaj. Thank you very much. Saying, as someone without a CS background, SerenityOS let me dive deep in OS dev and also contribute to it. Thank you for creating an extremely hackable operating system. You are welcome. I'm so happy to hear that. And I always imagine that the system is hackable, but to actually hear it from people makes it so much more real. So that is really nice. Thank you for saying that. I've been concerned about that lately, actually. Like, as the system grows in complexity, do we lose hackability? Or how do we maintain that really juicy hackability that we've been enjoying despite the system sort of growing in size and complexity? And so far, I feel like we're doing a good job of keeping things hackable. But it's always like in the back of my mind when I'm looking at new stuff, new additions and edits, that like, let's make sure that it's still approachable, because I don't want the system to become one of those things that is like super intimidating. I mean, there's always going to be a level of intimidation that happens with any code base, right? Because you're completely unfamiliar, but I think we have a track record of being like, proportionally speaking, very unintimidating. So I guess that's what I want to maintain. Would be good to hear more opinions about that, actually, because I guess I'm pretty detached from how hackable the system really is. Let's see. Armo says, hi everyone, hope 2022 has been good to you so far. Hi Andreas. Hello to you, Armo. 2022 has been just fine over here, at least. No accidents or incidents. Hope that's true for everybody, but you never know. German WTB says, do you prefer software rendered UI in general, or is it mostly that it's way easier to get started on? I don't really have a preference for software or a software rendered UI or hardware accelerated UI. You know, it's, if you can get hardware acceleration, I guess that's nicer, because it'll just be less work for your CPU, let's say, and like you can offload the CPU so it can focus on more CPU like tasks like compiling and stuff like that. That's definitely a benefit. So I guess I prefer hardware accelerated UI if it's a possibility, but for a UI like the one we have in Serenity, it's not that much of a problem, at least so far, because we don't do like crazy things that that just like bog down the CPU constantly. If you had more advanced UI effects, that might get irritating, right? But you know, I would be happy to use hardware acceleration if it once it becomes available to us. But at the moment, like it's not an issue as far as I'm concerned. Let's see. Ominous Liticus says, something I will try to contribute to then. Please. The only thing I would say about like working on concurrency API is to make sure that you have a use case that you are trying to drive and improve, instead of just building an API for the sake of building an API. That's something that we put a great emphasis on in the SerenityOS project, that we want things to be driven by driven by software development of the applications and libraries that we have, if that makes sense. Amir says, please suggest me best resource, free tutorials / books to learn system programming. Thanks. I don't really know which are the best resources for that. But I think in general, the most important thing to learn if you want to become great at systems programming is looking things up, because you're going to do a lot of that. So your first lesson in systems development is to go and find some good resources on systems development. Let's see. Ian says, I miss the code review videos. Since there's a lot of new PRs every day, I think they're very informative for the community. Sure. I should make more of those. That would be fun. Buzz Games says, hi Andreas, I have been really enjoying your videos. It's a bit like ASMR to me. How do you approach your videos? Is there any conscious thought to it, or is it just record and go? So there's not too much conscious thought. I get into the right headspace to make a video, and then I go online and find a wallpaper for the video that I can use, because I always have a new wallpaper. And then I sort of pick a subject to work on, and once I have that figured out, I just hit record. And then I try to just figure things out as I go. And sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder, but usually it works out. And I've learned to trust myself, both that I can come up with sort of problems that can be solved within a reasonable time, and also trust myself to actually solve them without getting too distracted. But, you know, when I started making videos years ago now, I wasn't so confident in those abilities. So that was always like kind of scary to embark on these larger programming projects. But nowadays it doesn't spook me that much. Let's see. Armo says, people who add or modify things in SerenityOS should post videos of their endeavors like Andreas and Linus do. And Linus. Yes. That way it is easier to retain some hackability. The videos would serve as tutorials. So it's definitely true that the videos have been hugely helpful for making the for giving people sort of a way to come into the system with warm clothes, warm hands or whatever. Like having seen somebody hack on something makes it so much easier to pick it up yourself, right? But at the same time, I can't tell anybody else what to do. I am super happy that Linus has started making hacking videos, and I would be super happy if more people do, but I'm not going to tell anybody to do it. The only one I hold responsible for doing things like that is myself. So that's all I can give you. German WTB says, I think a lot of the hackability is that the project feels approachable to newcomers. With more well-known projects, it can feel like a newcomer has nothing of value to contribute. Right. Yeah, that is an issue for sure, especially in like old established projects. But I guess we are in an interesting position with Serenity, where I always say that it's an operating system for us, by us, built on the things that we like or based on the things that we like. And that sort of means that if you join the project as a developer, the project can be about what you like also, right? And it's not about what some hypothetical user likes. It's just what we like. And you can become part of we by hacking on it. Venkatesh says, hi Andreas, just as a sake of curiosity, how did you learn programming and what is the go-to way if you start over? So I originally learned programming on a computer in the late 80s, early 90s. One of these things. And it was a, wait, do we have a picture of that? Right here. Beautiful. It was a machine with DOS, and it had a basic interpreter on it, and that's where I learned it. And just kind of borrowing books in the library and copying the program listings and messing things around to see what would happen if you change something, things like that. I was very, very young when I started, and I didn't always understand what I was doing. I just like would move things around and see what would happen, try to understand why something changed. And I definitely wouldn't approach it the same way today. Honestly, if I didn't know anything about programming and I would try to start learning it today, I guess I would just Google how to learn programming. It's hard to say, but like, if I think about it seriously, what do I do when I want to learn a new skill? I usually try to find videos of it, I guess. That's what I would normally do. Like I wanted to change a lamp in my car a while ago, so I just went and looked for a video of somebody doing that. And if I can't find a video, I guess I'll look for a website or a book or manual or something. But I don't know. It's been so long since I started learning programming that I'm just kind of detached from the idea of like starting over. I don't know how I would do it. I can just guess. Let's see. BuzzGames said that he agrees. Many projects to me feel like they are kind of done, if you get what I mean. It's a lot more enjoyable to build a new feature than to fix some bugs or something. I mean, yeah, that's definitely how many people feel, that it's funner to build features than it is to fix bugs. I personally don't really feel that way. Like I really like fixing bugs, improving performance. I also like removing features whenever you get an opportunity to do that. And you know, in recent years, I've really enjoyed security work, like mitigation and exploitation of security vulnerabilities. There's a lot of things you can do in a mature code base, and a lot of things you can do in a mature code base that you can't do in an immature code base because, like, it doesn't really make sense yet. But yeah, it attracts different people, I think. There's always going to be the people who want to live in the Wild West and only focus on like building something out of nothing. And there's the type of people who want to live in the city and have all the amenities, you know, available around the clock. And there's going to be the people who are a little bit in between. So I guess it's good that we have all kinds of different people. Tix3dev says, hi Andreas, do you have some tips or maybe resources for developing a Slab allocator? I am working on one and it's really interesting, but also hard to do some advanced operating system. There's a beginner here like this. Okay. So you are you're making a Slab allocator. So the key thing to know about Slab allocation, to make a really, really simple one, is just you want a big block and then you want to divide it into slabs, and then you want to hand out those slabs, right? So let me just make a simple file where we can sketch out a simple slab allocator. Let's see. So really, a slab allocator, you really want to have some kind of slab block. At least this is how I would normally build one. And let's just express this in the simplest possible way. So say that you have your slab size, and maybe we wait, what? All right, whatever. And you want to have some kind of storage for your slabs. So I usually do something like this. And then what you're going to do is you're going to allocate a big piece of these. Or actually, you know what? We can make a way less fancy slab allocator now that I think about it. We can also just do something like this. I never thought about making a less fancy slab allocator. No, I don't want to make a less fancy one. Let's make a normal one. So what we're going to have is you're going to allocate a big block. Let's say that it's 16 kilobytes, or one page, actually, if you prefer. So we're going to get a block. Let's just write this out. Slab block size. Wait, why don't you like that? Oh. All right. And then we are going to create a slab block here with this at this memory address. So now we have a 4 kilobyte allocation, and we have a slab block object at the start of that allocation. So the object literally is like, this is at the address 0 in this allocation, and then the rest of it is slabs. And then what I normally would do is just have a free list. So define a free list entry, which is just a simple singly linked list that looks like this. And you can say that it starts out empty, and then we would, let's not have a constructor. Let's just do it like this. So after we construct it, we will initialize the free list. So we just want to iterate through the entire slab thing. We need a slab size. Okay, and then our slab count is going to be the slab block size divided by the slab size. That's how many slabs we can have. And then we want to go that many loops. And then create our free list this way. So I guess we will do something like this. Yeah, we'll make an accessor. So here's the real trick, right? Like this, we allocate, when we create this thing, we don't just use the new operator, but instead we use placement new so that we can control the allocation size. So we have a 4 kilobyte block. And then this array here has some number of entries that is not known at compile time, because it really depends on how big of an allocation you place it into. So let's make a helper that just gets a slab by number. And then that would be index times slab size. Yeah. And then, of course, we have to now I'm making such a mess here. Hopefully this is understandable. Yes. Okay. And then we say f. Next is the block's current free list pointer, and then the block free list pointer becomes f. So that's how we initialize the free list. Now we have, this basically gives us a free list that just is a singly linked list that goes to every slab. And when one of the slabs is not in use, it is replaced by one of these structs. So like we have a linked list of unused slabs basically. And the unused slabs are very easy to allocate from. So you want to allocate from a slab block. Then you would do something like, let's see. So if we had something to allocate, then we update the free list. And deallocating is also pretty simple. You just have to put it back into the free list. Anyways, these are like the basic concepts, and you can go and look at the Slab allocator in the SerenityOS kernel if you want to see an implementation of how this can be done. And let's see. No, F. Wow, this is so much harder to do when there's a chat box that I keep wanting to look at it. But yeah, so like these are the basic operations that you have. You allocate from the slab block and deallocate to the slab block. And this is how I would set it up. And then of course you would want to make a nice API around this, but I wrote it this way sort of to make it a little bit more instructive what's going on. There are many different ways you can approach it, and there are techniques to make access faster. And you probably want to do a bunch of validation and verification that the inputs are good so that you don't deallocate a bogus pointer somewhere. But I recommend once you sort of understand the concepts, you can go and look at the kmalloc slab allocator, for example, in kernel heap kmalloc CPP. But it also uses some additional fancy techniques. I wrote that whole thing in a video that you can watch on the channel as well. Anyway, let's see. Let's get back to we had a bunch of questions. Let's see. Knarf Giedbacke says, given the previously discussed IPC, you use a X graphics server, thus any X system can remotely connect and use Serenity as a multi-user system. We do not use X11 at all. We have our own Windows server with its own protocol. There is no X11. Ignas says, recently Elon Musk mentioned that they dropped C++ in favor of C. I think he mentioned C++ overhead as a reason. I wonder what he meant exactly. I have no idea what he would mean by that. But I recall him saying at some point that when he originally started PayPal back in the day, he was doing all the programming himself. And then the first time they hired more programmers, it turned out that they were way better at programming than he was. So he just let go and let them handle the programming. So, you know, take from that what you will. Leonardo says, what is the difference between omputter, rawputter, refputter, etc.? In your last video, you were complaining about a class that was using omputter unnecessarily. Right, so we have a oops, that's not what I wanted to open, but shout outs to, to Natalie. We have a documentation page about smart pointers that you can find right here. And it describes each of the different smart pointers that we have and what they are for. The reason that I was complaining about omeputter in the last video was because using omeputter means that you're pointing to a heap allocated object. So it requires that you malloc the memory instead of just using memory that's available on the stack. So it was just an unnecessary use of a heap allocation, basically, that I was noticing. James says, well, hello, friends, and well, hello, Kling. Missed the first hour, hope nothing too interesting. I wasn't, there were some interesting parts, I think. I hope. Let's see. Johan Lundström says, when will you start working on a web camera driver and video editor? What is missing to be able to upload videos to YouTube from inside Serenity? So I don't really have a plan to work on anything specific at any specific time, but sooner or later, for sure. What is missing to be able to upload videos to YouTube? YouTube compatibility is really weak. There is a lot of browser work that will be needed before we can do that. I have not actually tried to load YouTube for a long time, so why don't we give it a try right here? But last time it didn't go super well, so let's see. Last time I think it oomed, actually. Like we ran out of memory. But yeah, you can see the memory use growing down here. And we died. Wonder why. This new progress bar that shows up in the crash reporter, by the way, is sick. Ooh, is this a stack overflow? Feels like one. Yeah, we should probably make it like clearer when something is a stack overflow. So where's our pointer? 1410 F20, and where's the stack? 1410. Yeah. So it's a stack overflow. Yeah, we could definitely have a heuristic that like checks, oh, your stack pointer is about to duck under the stack limit. So it looks like a JavaScript parser, possibly infinite recursion problem that we need to debug. But yeah, so even if we were able to load YouTube here, it would not display correctly. There's a ton of things. I don't think we've ever done a successful Google login to one of their services. So a whole bunch of things to get that working, and lots of just like implementing web stuff. But we'll get there, one step at a time. Victor says he always enjoys the amicable fight with a compiler/linter. Yeah, who doesn't? That's always a nice way to spend your time. Let's see. Delta says, any tips on understanding the CMake/Ninja build process and toolchain in Serenity from a beginner's point of view? I guess it depends on what you want to understand. If you just want to use it to build, then you can just follow the instructions. That's essentially what I do most of the time, to be honest. And whenever I want to like create a new sub-project or something, I just like copy paste an existing CMake list. So if I wanted to start a new library, I wouldn't go and like learn exactly how CMake works with everything. I would just say like, oh, I'm gonna make a library. I'll just libnew, and I'll copy the lib syntax CMake lists into libnew, and then edit that to maybe contain a new thing.cpp, because that's my source file, and then make sort of the the appropriate heuristic changes here. Nothing fancy. That's what I do personally. I think that's what most people do probably, except maybe the CMake experts in the crowd who would just chonk one of these boys out from scratch. But if you want to know more details about how that works, I recommend joining the Discord server and asking if somebody can help you out with that, help you out with what you want to understand, because it was all built by people, so there are people who can explain it to you. You can also work it out from documentation, but as you say, if you are a beginner, I don't think that it would be like the most productive use of your time unless you happen to be super interested in CMake, because it's like a little bit detailed. Dash Dash says, "Good morning, Andreas." Good morning to you, Dash Dash. Johan Lundström says, "Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Andreas, for the amazing content. Everything is intensely interesting." Thank you for saying that. Alex Gravener says, "What's the high-level description of how the scheduler works?" The high-level description is that it's a round-robin scheduler with priority queues, and we essentially have there's a hierarchy of priorities, or not even a hierarchy. There's a set of priorities. There's like low priority, and then a range all the way up to high priority, and we divide those into buckets. So whenever there is a high priority thread that wants to run because that thread is runnable, then we will just run that until it runs out of its time slice, and then we'll run the next available high priority thread. When there are no more high priority threads, we run a slightly high priority thread until we run out of runnable threads in that bucket, and then we work our way down to the low priority threads and run them when everything else has been satisfied. That's sort of how it works right now. It's definitely an area where we could improve, and its improvement is kind of tied into doing more work on the multi-core support, which there hasn't been a lot of digging into that recently, but that might be an interesting area to pick back up. Let's see. Mati says, "What do you think about tabs in window title bar or ribbons?" Tab in window title bar. I guess I don't really like the idea. What would be the purpose? You mean like BOS? Like BOS tab? Like this thing where you can like dock windows to each other or whatever? I don't remember exactly how that works. I remember messing around with it and feeling like I didn't really dig it, but it's been too long. Yeah, so like tabs up here, and then you can sort of drag applications next to CD player, and then they form they sort of combine into a tabbed UI. I don't know. And then you asked about the ribbons. So personally, I've never been a fan of ribbons UIs. I remember when they first came out, and I felt like they were dumbing down the Microsoft Office interface, which I was a big fan of the 1990s, late 90s Office interface. I would say that's even my most favorite interface of all time, and it's the UI paradigm that the entire Serenity operating system is built on, is sort of the late 90s, early 2000s Microsoft Office, even down to stuff like the specific menu style and the way that the buttons, the toolbar buttons, go slightly up and to the left when you hover over them. All these little subtle things from Office 2000 or thereabouts. So when the ribbon UI came out, I was very sad and disappointed in the direction, because I felt like they were just giving up on a really beautiful UI, I guess. So it's definitely not something I'm looking to replicate. But, to each their own. That's just my personal subjective opinion, of course. QRSQRT says, "Hi, what's your and Serenity other developers' opinion of integrating concepts into the codebase? Do you mean C++ concepts? If so, I think we already have some concepts. I think we have even like a concepts.h right here that has a bunch of them. I think concepts are neat, but as long as they don't like dramatically worsen compile times or cause like some kind of header dependency explosion or whatever, I think they're fine. It's a nice thing. It's a nice concept. But it like I don't want it getting in the way of productivity either, right? So like if you want to express something as a concept in order to constrain something, but like there's no real value in doing it, you're just like doing it because you can, then it feels a little bit like unnecessary complexity, I guess. But that has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Let's see. Concon Software says hello from the Dominican Republic. Hello to you, Concon of the Dominican Republic. I don't believe we've had a guest from DR before, so very nice to have you here. Armo says, does your scheduler cater for dynamic priorities? Do you prevent thread starvation? So we had some techniques for that in the past. As I recall, the scheduler was rewritten and simplified during multi-core bring up, so we did lose some of that functionality. That would be a good thing to reintegrate at some point. But it's not, I don't think it's something that we do at the moment, as I recall. Let's see. And Kenneth with the super chat. Thank you very much, Kenneth, who says, Happy New Year, Andreas. Appreciate the opportunity to hack on Serenity and being able to tap into your knowledge. I appreciate you, Kenneth, and I've really been enjoying your serious grunt work on just spreading all of these new programming patterns throughout the codebase. Kenneth has been doing a whole bunch of work on using our new arrow propagation patterns, and it's just been really great. So thank you very much for that and for the super chat. Susie Bros says, would you consider doing a gaming on Serenity series? For example, a Half-Life playthrough. Maybe we should. That might be fun. It's been a minute. It's been a long time since I played through Half-Life, but it would be fun to see if I can get through it on Serenity now that we kind of sort of have it. And it would also be fun to validate that it's actually possible to play through the entire game, because you never know, like maybe we would have to stop in the middle and debug something. Let's see. Armo was an MCSD at the time and was then saddened by the ribbon abomination. Yeah, it was a little bit of a shocking UI development. I remember in those days, like after XP came out, people in the industry, around me at least, were immediately like very skeptical about what Microsoft was suddenly doing. And there was this meme at the time about like Fisher Price, because they put out XP, which kind of looked like a goofy children's toy, I guess, at least by default. And I remember people suddenly going from like being huge Microsoft fanboys to like seriously concerned about what they were suddenly doing. It was an interesting shift, almost overnight. Let's see. James says, are there specifications like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. that you find particularly well written? What about not so well written? Mono often uses the comment lame spec when the .NET standard is unclear. Okay, so hold on. Let me just pour some more tea here. But I will say that I think the JavaScript spec is probably the best spec out of all the specs that we implement in Serenity, or the best spec, the specs that we work with. It's just so incredibly detailed, and it's very rare that you find something that's ambiguous or like missing from the JavaScript or ECMAScript spec. I think it's a great spec, but of course it has flaws. The main thing that I always notice when I'm doing anything with the ECMAScript spec is that they have like an inconsistent scheme for naming variables in their sort of pseudocode algorithms. Like sometimes they use like a single letter variable name, sometimes they have an abbreviation of some type, and sometimes they spell out the whole thing, and it's just like mix and match, and that always stands out to me. But that's a really small complaint about an otherwise great specification. I do think in general the web specs are really good. It's just that the ECMAScript spec is just leaps ahead of all the other specs, in part because it's of course like a narrower spec with like less variation in implementations, so it's been like easier for them to actually catch up to the implementations, but they keep evolving, so that's good. Evolva project says, can I port QEMU and host Linux on SerenityOS? Yes, you can. Ooh, look, it's Nico with a super chat. Some kind of animated pear, I guess. Is that a pear? Throwing me a cup of tea. So thank you for that, Nico. I was just talking about you earlier, saying that I believe that you are one of the authors of Ninja, and that I would love to know why Ninja is faster than Make. Let's see. NK. Oh, wait, hold up. Let me not miss people here. Kevin says, hey, Andreas, do you think that support for modules, as in C++ modules, will be in a state where you might start integrating it into Serenity? I mean, eventually we'll get to that state. Eventually we'll get to the state where we can make a little prototype and see what it can do for us. And once it gets to that place, we can just evaluate and go from there. In theory, modules should offer a very nice compile time reduction, in theory. In practice, I have no idea what it offers, so we'll find out. But I do like the idea of modules, and we'll definitely explore it. NK says, hey ho, I recently compiled Serenity and ran into a problem with RDRAND and RDSeed with my AMD CPU. It crashed with unsupported opcode exceptions. I fixed it by uncommenting the random code in the kernel calling the opcodes. I wonder why it failed to detect the abilities of my CPU. Can you explain a little the CPU info in the kernel? So the CPU info is based on the CPU ID instruction, which is like a standard x86 architecture instruction that gives you information about CPU features. And we ask this thing to tell us if we have RDRAND, right? And I believe we also check for RDSeed. So it's weird that wait, are we actually checking for it though? So wait, hold on. If supports RDSeed or supports RDRAND. Yeah, so maybe the logic is busted somewhere, but the idea is that if the CPU tells us that it has these instructions, then we'll use them. Otherwise, we don't use them. It would be kind of nice if you could figure out, like, you can check on your host machine, like on Linux, you can check your proc CPU info to see if it claims that you have already ran an RDC. Yeah, so you can see here that I have it in mine. Let's do a fancy egrep. Boom. Yeah, we have both. It would be good to know if you have those. If you don't have them, why do we think you have them? And then maybe we can figure that out. Yeah. Let's see. Alex K says, when developing the web browser, is there a conflict with the various ways websites want to track their users? Is it possible to build a modern browser without these tracking features? Sure. I mean, to an extent. You can only suppress so much tracking before you break behavior. So historically, Safari has been the most aggressive of the major browsers when it comes to sort of rejecting tracking features and like suppressing trackable information. So they have this heuristic-based thing called intelligent tracker prevention, which is a whole thing that uses statistics and stuff to figure out like which kind of like typical tracking accesses are valid, like which kind of cross-site scripting accesses should be allowed versus which ones are likely to be tracking and things like that. And the thing is that if you are Safari or Chrome or Firefox and you implement some feature that breaks some pages by like removing trackable surface, then since you're so big and have so many users, then the sites are probably going to fix, are going to adapt to your restriction. Whereas if we were to just implement like arbitrary restrictions to make tracking less productive or whatever, we'll just have broken websites that they're not going to fix just because we don't support their tracking features that they want, right? So it's a tricky thing, I think. You have to, like if you are the underdog, which we clearly are in this scenario, our best option is to like look for probably like if we want to take it super seriously, like look for things where we can homogenize our fingerprints, maybe like make ourselves look like a more common, more popular user agent or something like that. But we're probably going to have to like do what the others do if we want the web to actually work in our browser, at least until we become the most popular browser engine on the planet, at which point we will start coming up with our own web specifications, of course, and just forcing everybody else to implement them through various grassroots campaigns and things like that. Anyway, let's see. Oh man, I really got skipped away from here. Chiza says that everything in the early 2000s looked like a Fisher-Price toy. I don't get what the obsession with gradients and curves was. Well, I think one of the things that happened in the early 2000s was that people started, what we called true color displays became commonplace. So before Windows XP, it was pretty common for people to have like 256 color screens, for example. And I think XP came out around the time when people started having like full 24-bit displays. And so you could reliably display high color graphics on any computer. And people who were making software were really hyped about this, and they wanted to really make use of the increase in available colors. So they got a little out of hand. Oh man, I got all this info here from Nico about why Ninja is faster, presumably. So let's read it, since I asked about it. So Nico Weber says, the original Ninja author was Evan Martin, but I was maintainer for a while, did some performance and porting work, etc. But one of the surprising easy wins is that Ninja defaults to -J to number of cores, while Make defaults to -J1. And surprisingly, many people don't know about the -J flag. So many people are like, whoa, this is 10 times faster than Make just due to that. And then, Ninja is designed to have its input files generated instead of handwritten, so it can omit many features, and features are slow. For example, make-r disables built-in rules, and that makes things much faster for big makefiles. Ninja just doesn't have built-in rules. Ninja's build language by design is restrictive, so people can't shoot themselves in the foot. It has a very simple graph model, so it can run many things in parallel. As opposed to Microsoft Visual C++, Xcode, etc., which group compiles under projects, and often projects can't be built in parallel due to them running arbitrary scripts, and the dependencies between those are not specified, etc. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. The summary is, it's faster because it's simpler, omits needless work, etc. All right, thank you, Nico. And that's a great answer. So Ninja is essentially faster because it is simpler than Make. That makes perfect sense. Make is a fungus that has grown in the Unix aquarium for a very long time and accumulated tons of features and idiosyncratic little behaviors. And there's even like 2 major subtly different Make implementations, right? There's GNU Make and BSD Make. Each with their own weirdnesses. So it makes sense that if you make something simpler, then you could make it faster easily. So Leonardo says, this week I read about a Linux patch with more than 2,000 commits to partially solve the header dependency hell. Do you think Serenity will have the same problem, and how can we avoid it? I just saw the headline of that. I'm not actually aware of what the issue was, but I think with any C++ project, header dependencies are a factor in build time performance. And I guess the thing that we just talked about briefly earlier, C++ modules, is in theory one solution to like all header dependency issues in theory. But let's see what happens in practice. Alex Major, by the way, said, I might have missed this, but how is localization handled in Serenity? There is no localization in Serenity. It is a US English operating system that does not attempt to be localized. It's just in English because everybody here speaks English, and then we don't have to have low quality translations make the system look terrible in screenshots. Instead, we can have a nice, consistent look everywhere that we can manicure and take care of properly. Let's see, James Pulio says, I've seen some ECMAScript flaws brought up by some people implementing something in libjs, but it's so cool to then see them fixing the spec itself. Some in temporal and even in console. Yeah, so that's one of my absolute favorite things that's happening in the Serenity project is when people are working on implementing a spec, like in JavaScript, some new feature or whatever, they find bugs in the spec and then they go and they fix the spec. That is just beautiful. It shows us that there's value in creating a new implementations of browsers and JavaScript engines and things like that, and because it exposes issues with the spec that nobody else found yet, right? And I've said many times that I think engine diversity is the only browser diversity that really matters, because of things like this, right? You need engine diversity to flush out specification problems, and however small we are, I love that we are contributing a little bit of engine diversity to the world. So Dash Dash says, honestly, seeing how far your operating system has come genuinely inspires me to create my own. I'm currently working on an emulated embedded Linux project with QEMU. Fantastic. I hope that it will go really well, whatever that ends up being. I am just always so happy when people say that I inspired them to make something, anything. It doesn't even matter what, just for one more person in the world to go and make something instead of just like sitting on your butt watching Netflix or whatever. That's awesome. And I don't know why I use Netflix as an example. I think it's just because what I used to do in the past. But, whatever you do instead of making, I'm really happy when people say that they get into making things. That is the nicest. Let's see. NK says, yes, the CPU info seems a little wrong. I wonder where you got the definitions of the bits. I looked into the Intel spec and it differs from the code in the kernel. Ooh, so maybe we have bogus bit definitions for those CPU info bits. You could definitely, if you figure out which one is wrong and you fix it, that will be an awesome pull request. So please do, if you don't mind. Let's see. PTE says, can you show how you would go about implementing semaphore with fairness? I don't know how to do that. I'm sure we could figure it out, but I have 14 minutes, so this isn't really the time. If you want to read about synchronization primitives, I have our friend Sergey, who is currently in the army, but used to hack on SerenityOS before he got into the army. He has a repo on GitHub called Let's Implement Synchronization Primitives, I think it's called. Let's Write Sync Primitives. Yeah, Sergey has a very nice GitHub repo where he implements various synchronization primitives, so there might be something interesting there. Definitely recommend checking that out if you're interested in those kind of things. Ali says, seriously, question mark. Just about every single document I've seen about make mentions -j. How do people manage to not know about it? Well, I think most people learn about, here's my guess. Most people learn about make because they read a README for something that they want to install. It says, to install, do this. Right? Or this. To install, please do. And that's how that's why they run make in the first place. They're not going to go and read about make. And so you sort of, make gets ingrained into your, like you learn about make this way and then you're just aware of it, so you don't go and look it up. And I can see how that happens. So there you go. There's an answer to your rhetorical question. Victor says, isn't the Brave browser kind of that? Not really. Brave is just, I mean, it has some of their own things, but essentially it's just Chromium, right? It's Chromium with a bunch of, how do we say this in a diplomatic way? It's Chromium with a bunch of features on top that remove ads from the web and instead give you ads from Brave that you can opt into. Ba, 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 ba. Nico says, looks like YouTube chat silently omits messages containing URLs. Yeah, that's that's funny you say that, because it's one of the things we talked about earlier also, that this is a problem on YouTube right now, that if you put a URL into a comment or the chat, it's very likely to get deleted. And it's doubly super frustrating because you type something that has URL and in a comment on my videos, and then I get a notification about your comment. I see a little bit of the comment, but then the comment gets deleted. So the way it's set up in YouTube itself seems really stupid, because like they commit the comment to the database and then they delete it right away. Who knows how that works? Let's see. YouTube chat silently omits messages, but then he wants to paste a URL to something, and then he says, maybe Mr. AF Kling can post a URL then. I don't know what it is I'm supposed to post a URL for, but are we talking about the Ninja build system? If so, I guess it's ninjabuild.org. Are we talking about something else? I don't know. I've lost context. Let's see. Thomas Dini says, I'm going to brew some tea. Thank you for inspiring me. Yes, I'm happy to. I don't think I made enough tea for today, so I'm going to have to make some more after this. Armo says, I started working on a pseudo operating system in JavaScript running in a browser. It started as a way to learn JavaScript, and it's a personal thing. I love recreating the wheel. I love it too. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Having fun by recreating the wheel is fun. Fun is fun. We should never let anybody tell us what's fun. Whatever we find fun is fun, right? Slendy says, Andreas, do you know how to code in HolyC? I can't say that I do. I looked into it at some point in the past and doodled around a bit, but I found it was not really a productive use of time, so I sort of didn't dig deeper into that. Nico says, see Twitter DMs in case I can access that. Ooh, let me go in my Twitter, which is still overflowing with I'm still getting so many notifications because of a dumb joke I posted yesterday, with so many people not getting the joke. I see. So Ninja by Evan Martin, the performance of open source applications. Osa book Ninja. I guess this is the thing, right? So clickety clack. I hope that was the right thing. Now I just kind of heuristically determined the URL. Let's see. Matash says, does anyone know where I could find good resources for practical C++ tasks, real-life usage? I only have synthetic C++ knowledge. I need resources on how to apply my knowledge in real applications. So I think the best thing you can do with that is probably to go and fix bugs in real C++ applications. There's tons of open source software written in C++ that you can go and hack on. That's definitely how I got started with KDE back in the day. So I was a user of KDE, and then I decided to just pick it up and fix random bugs in it, and that was extremely constructive when I was first like starting to learn C++ seriously. So fixing bugs in open source C++ software, that's what I would say. So just like take whatever C++ software you're currently using, you can go and try to hack on that. But anything works. Let's see. NK will investigate the CPU info thing in detail and try to fix it, or we'll come back when he knows more. Great. I'm happy to hear that. It's always great if somebody has some piece of hardware that struggles with Serenity for whatever reason. It's always awesome when they try to like come up with a fix themselves, because like obviously they might be the only person who can test it, right? So NK, maybe you're the only person who can test this right now. So if you can figure out what's wrong and patch it, that would be super awesome. James says, long ago, Linus made JS bindings for LibGUI and other things, as you probably know. Yes, I remember. Do you believe this could be a proper sustainable feature in Serenity? Use cases you think it would be appropriate? Yeah, I think it could be a proper sustainable feature. I would love to see that feature sort of done again. And like, you know, we've learned so much in the time since that was first done. We could probably do a way better job of it. So it would be interesting to see. And, you know, we have a lot of simple applications. So maybe not everything needs to be a C++ application. Like if you just want to throw up like a simple UI to do something small, you could do it with JavaScript and LibGUI. Who knows? Only the future knows. Only time will tell. That's what I was trying to say. Slendy says, what do I think about Stivale, especially Stivale 2? I have no opinion about Stivale, the Stivale boot protocol, because I haven't used it. And I try not to have opinions of things I haven't used, because that would be silly. Marcin says, hello from Poland. Hello to you too. Let's see. Armo says, the legendary programmer Alexei of the channel Coding Daily has been programming the recent advent of code. Is it maybe? In HolyC exclusively. You will find everything there. 25 days of HolyC. That sounds like quite the rabbit hole. But yeah. I go on Twitch sometimes and I watch Coding, so I'm familiar with his antics, and maybe there's something to look at there. Let's see. Vesna says, when will you sing rock? I don't know. When we get to 1 million subscribers, I will sing a rock song. Let's say. And you get to choose it. James says, all right, last one, and it's controversial. Favorite SerenityOS Discord emote. What about favorite yak? Well, I'm gonna have to bring up the Kleines Filmröllchen Jack-Explained repo here. Let's see. Which one do I like? I like all of these in their own way. Like every one of them has its like moment where it's just the right emote, you know? Like the gold yak is excellent when somebody does something really awesome. You can just, gift them a gold yak. The party yak, such an obvious combination of the party emoji and the yak. But which one do I like the most? The Yaktoberfest one was pretty good. I think the one, if I'm to be honest, like the one I find myself using a lot is the yak thonk, probably, like this goofy thinking yak. So that's probably my favorite in terms of usage. It's just, there's just something about that dumb face that it's just funny to me. But I don't know. They all have a sweet soft spot in my heart. Man, we just have so many of these. Anyway, I'm just gonna link that so that people can decide for themselves which one they like. And we got another super chat from Nico. Thank you, Nico. This time a spoiler alert. Wait. It's a spoiler alert, but like there's nothing, I can't open anything. So it's just a picture of a spoiler alert, but it's not actually a text. Now I'm confused. And on that note, since I am now confused, I guess we need to wrap it up because it's 6 o'clock and this will be the end of office hours. And I hope it went okay. A little bit of a friendly session today. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming to office hours and for all the interesting questions and for the super chats and just the generally very nice vibe. Oh, Yak Fused. Dude, I totally forgot about Yak Fused. Yak Fused is amazing. This is such a great emote to post when something doesn't make sense. And somebody's saying something that just doesn't really make sense. And then people respond with this. Gotta love it. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And I'm gonna go and do some programming. So if you end up working on Serenity this weekend, please come to Discord and hang out with us. Tell us what you're working on and let's talk about it. Lovely to see you all here today and see you next time. Bye.